Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I am Adrian Fort, and we are here for another poetry discussion, which will appear in two separate playlists here on the channel. Number one, obviously, being the poetry discussion playlist, but number two, the Charles Bukowski playlist, a playlist that is growing ever closer to, I believe, 70 videos. I believe we're in the 60s now, so ever closer to 70. There is also, if you did not know, and if you love me, and I know that you do, a link to my personal channel to be found in the description below. Over there, I talk about philosophy, I talk about movies, I talk about cultural stuff, I talk about that sort of thing, and it would mean a lot to me if you followed me over there, because I am nearing 1,000 subscribers on that channel. So I would appreciate that. Now, let's get into it for this. A Charles Bukowski joint. The poem in question, titled I'm in Love. She's young, she said, but look at me. I have pretty ankles. And look at my wrists. I have pretty wrists. Oh my God. I thought it was all working. And now it's her again. Every time she phones, you go crazy. You told me it was over. You told me it was finished. Listen, I've lived long enough to become a good woman. Why do you need a bad woman? You need to be tortured, don't you? You think life is rotten. If somebody treats you rotten, it all fits, doesn't it? Tell me, is that it? Do you want to be treated like a piece of shit? And my son was going to meet you. I told my son, and I dropped all my lovers. I stood up in a cafe and screamed, I'm in love. And now you've made a fool of me. I'm sorry, I said. I'm really sorry. Hold me, she said. Will you please hold me? I've never been in one of these things before, I said. These triangles. She got up and lit a cigarette. She was trembling all over. She paced up and down, wild and crazy. She had a small body. Her arms were thin, very thin. And when she screamed and started beating me, I held her wrists, and then I got it through the eyes. Hatred, centuries deep and true. I was wrong and graceless and sick. All the things I had learned had been wasted. There was no creature living as foul as I, and all my poems were false. It do be like this, don't it? There are people who find themselves in this perpetual state of suffering, perpetual state of rottenness, as we are told in this poem. Have you ever heard of learned helplessness? So, the behavioralists, very effective psychologists, but sort of cruel. One of the things that they did is they had these dogs in cages, and they would electrify the grate beneath them. And no matter what, that grate was electrified. And then they set up a partition. So the dog being electrocuted, just shocked, not like, but shocked, very uncomfortable, still not okay, but not like outright electrocuted, not like 50,000 volts electrocuted, but not comfortable, in pain. Eventually learning that no matter how much they jumped around, no matter how hard they digged at the crate, no matter how much they banged up against the sides of this crate, it would hurt. Learning that, they started just laying down, giving up. It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt for 30 seconds, a minute and a half, whatever it was. It's going to hurt. I may as well just lay down. Then, and look, not a psychologist, didn't take these classes. Maybe I have small details wrong, but essentially what I'm telling you is the right thing. They would set up a partition in the middle of this cage. Half of the cage would be electrified. The other half would not. Once that electricity started, all the dog had to do was step across the partition. and it would not be shocked. Instead, every time that shock started, the dog simply laid down, assuming that this pain was going to persist. It learned that no matter what it did, that pain would be there. That is learned helplessness. We, as people, live there. Some level, some part of our life, at least, we live there. Chinaski in this poem has decided that he cannot be happy in a relationship, has decided that he cannot find love, has decided that no matter what, something has to go wrong. And if it doesn't, by God, he's going to do it himself. He'll take the onus on himself, put it on his shoulders, and ruin the thing. And that is what he has done here. He has taken this relationship with this woman who has proclaimed her love and decided, ooh, look at that is awful, and decided that it can't be. Something has to be wrong. Things are getting too cozy. And then, of course, we have at the end here, because Chinaski is the consummate poet, all my poems were false. So we have that little ditty there. What color do we want to make this? There we go. Blue's nice. And right before that, where are we here? I was wrong and graceless and sick. The blank and blank and blank, right? Very thin. The varies. All of these things are very Hemingway. Hemingway said that if you want to be a writer, you have to write one true sentence. But all of Chinaski's poems end up being false. All of Chinaski's poems ending up false means he is not a writer. He did not write that one true sentence. I was wrong and graceless and sick. Why would we need to channel, as it were, Hemingway here? Hemingway did the same thing. Hemingway ruined, or was at least complicit in the ruining, of all of his relationships as well. Hemingway did not have a very good track record with intrapersonal skills and relationships. Why is that necessary to know? Maybe that is what makes for good writing. Being such a flawed character. And all of the false nature of your writing comes from living and reliving these moments. Deep and true, I was wrong and graceless and sick. All my poems were false. That sounds ripped straight from a Hemingway story. Hemingway ultimately being one of the most tragic characters in American letters. Is that what Chinaski is aiming for here? Is that where Chinaski finds himself at the end of this poem? It's hard to say. Certainly, he finds himself nowhere good. Certainly, just like with Hemingway, it's probably deep-seated in nature. That's the reason he finds himself where he is, just like Hemingway. Is there something necessary about that? Is there something inherent to ruining your own interactions that lends itself to being writerly? Not a whole lot of socially well-adjusted writers now, are there? Hemingway also said that no man is so lonely as a writer but the suicide, something like that. And Hemingway kind of knew about both. So is it this learned helplessness that Chinaski, the writer, is communicating to his audience here? Is that learned helplessness the learned helplessness of being a writer? Being a flawed soul? Maybe. That's all I have for this poetry discussion. If you enjoy what I do here or appreciate it, hitting the like button tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers, and I would greatly appreciate that. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, there's poetry on the channel every Monday. There are also short stories, as well as right now we're going through both Dubliners by James Joyce as well as the Hemingway Finca edition, story by story. We're also reading through No Longer Human. So if you might enjoy any of those series, consider coming back as well. We are also reading through the entire collection of Sylvia Plath. That is all I have for this video, and I hope to have you back for the next one.